Day 128. We're going to start by reading scripture again. I've got quite a few verses here. We're going to read a story in chapter 14 of Matthew. We'll start in verses 22. We'll read at least through 36. It says, "Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. 'It's a ghost,' they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, 'Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid.' 'Lord, if it is you,' Peter replied, 'tell me to come to you on the water.' 'Come,' he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. When he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, he cried out, 'Lord, save me.' Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. 'You of little faith, why did you doubt?' And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, 'Truly, you are the Son of God.' When they had crossed over the land at Gennesaret," probably pronouncing that wrong, "and when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed." I want to very specifically focus in this video on the part of Peter first trusting the Lord and walking on the water. And then very specifically, it says in here, when Peter saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." And how many times do we have good intentions and we want to listen and trust God in our life? And we have a relationship with him and we're doing our best. But when we start to look left or right, as it says in here, the winds came and Peter was afraid because he saw the wind, he saw his surroundings. And I'm sure in that moment, of course, I don't know for sure, but I'm sure in that moment, it was this reality hit Peter, this human reality of like, oh my gosh, I'm actually walking on the water. And it sounds like it was a stormy situation. And when he really started to look left and right and down, instead of looking at Jesus, that's when Peter started to panic. That's when the panic set in. That's when he started to fear, and that's when he started to sink. And he was just begging for help. "Lord, save me." And man, I can relate to that in my life with whatever storm that I'm going through, and I'm trying to walk lockstep with Jesus and follow him. I will start to look left and right, and the reality and the difficulty and the fear and the anxiety of my situation will start to overwhelm me at times. I'm sure that's the same for you. We all have different adversities. We all have different trials and tribulations. But when you're in the middle of that storm and that reality starts to sink in, just like it did for Peter, we have a choice to make in that moment. It's like, yes, I am starting to panic because I'm human, but am I going to trust Jesus more than I'm going to trust, or than I'm going to worry about my earthly circumstance? Am I going to trust Jesus more than I'm going to worry about my earthly circumstance? And I just think that's such a interesting part in the Bible there, where Peter, he got down out of the boat, he walked on the water, and he came towards Jesus. And instead of looking at the wind, and instead of thinking about sinking, I just wonder if we can just keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, if we can look above daily. Like I was saying yesterday, just writing it in our minds and in our hearts every single day, the constant reminder. If you need a daily reminder, an hourly reminder, an every minute reminder, whatever you got to do to just keep your eyes fixed on Jesus and to have the right perspective, then you're going to be much more likely to, you still might have the human emotion and the fear and the anxiety, but if we can just stay fixed on Jesus, we're going to have so much better spiritual perspective amidst our storm. So that's what I got today. That's a story that we've always heard, I believe, growing up in church, is Peter trusting Jesus and walking on water, but that just very specific detail about him hearing the wind and starting to become afraid, and then he starts to sink, and then he starts to call out for Jesus. Like, that progression there is very interesting to me, and I think that it's obviously that's a true story in the Bible, but it's also symbolic for me with things that I experience in my life. In the succession, or the progression of the way things go is I try to focus on Jesus. Then I start to understand the reality of my scary earthly circumstance. And then I start to panic. And then I start scrambling and asking him for all of this help. And I can only imagine, if I'm really listening to him and having eyes to see and ears to hear him in my life, it's, ye of little faith. Like, why are you doubting? Be still. Like I said yesterday, what I need to continue to write in my mind and my soul is that reminder from Jesus of be still and know that I am God. And I thought that paired really nicely with yesterday's message of being still amidst our crazy earthly circumstances. And then this message today of, just like Peter, when you're walking on water and you're fixed on Jesus, if you start to panic and if you start to sink, let's do our best to be still and know that he is God. He has got us, and there's no reason to fear. That's day 128.